The phone call that would nearly destroy Frank Sinatra's life rang through his Palm Springs compound at 3:17 a.m. on November 15, 1963. Sam Giancana's voice was cold, controlled, and more dangerous than Frank had ever heard it. "Frankie, we got a problem. The Kennedys threw you under the bus. The FBI knows everything, and both sides want you dead. You better decide real quick whose side you're on, because staying neutral ain't an option anymore." Frank Sinatra held the phone with trembling hands, realizing that his friendship with the Chicago mob boss had finally reached the point where there was no safe way out. For 3 years, he had walked the tightrope between Hollywood glamour and underworld power, believing he could maintain friendships with both President John F. Kennedy and America's most dangerous gangster without consequences. "What do you mean, both sides want me dead?" Frank whispered, though he already knew the answer would shatter the illusion of protection that his celebrity status had always provided. "The FBI thinks you're a mob informant who helped us fix elections and launder money," Sam explained with deadly calm. "My people think you're a federal snitch who sold us out to save your Hollywood career. And the Kennedys want you disappeared before you embarrass them any more than you already have. Face it, Frankie, you're fucked from every direction." What had begun as a mutually beneficial friendship between America's most popular entertainer and Chicago's most powerful crime boss had become a death trap that threatened to destroy Frank's career, reputation, and life. The FBI had 3 years of wiretapped conversations proving Frank's deep involvement with organized crime, while the mob had evidence of Frank's cooperation with federal investigations that made him a marked man in the underworld. The deadly friendship that would nearly cost Frank Sinatra everything had started so simply, so naturally, that neither man realized they were creating a relationship that would make them both targets of forces more powerful than either Hollywood or the Chicago outfit. If you're fascinated by the moment when celebrity glamour collided with criminal reality, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This is the story of how Frank Sinatra's most dangerous friendship nearly ended his life and definitely destroyed everything he had worked to achieve. The meeting that changed everything. February 1960. Frank Sinatra's introduction to Sam Giancana came through the glittering world of 1960s Las Vegas, where entertainment and organized crime intersected so naturally that few people questioned the friendships that developed between performers and the men who controlled the casinos where they worked. The Sands Hotel, Frank's unofficial headquarters and the epicenter of the Rat Pack's legendary performances, was deeply connected to mob financing and management. While Frank performed on stage for Hollywood celebrities and wealthy tourists, the real power in the building belonged to men like Sam Giancana, who controlled the money, the security, and the behind-the-scenes operations that made Vegas entertainment possible. Sam Giancana was not your typical gangster stereotype. At 52 years old, he was sophisticated, well-dressed, and charming in conversation. More like a successful businessman than a violent criminal. As the boss of the Chicago outfit, Sam controlled gambling, labor unions, and political corruption throughout the Midwest, while maintaining the kind of polished exterior that allowed him to move comfortably in legitimate society. Sam was nothing like what you'd expect from a mob boss, recalled Rat Pack member Peter Lawford. He was intelligent, well-spoken, and genuinely funny. When Frank introduced us, I thought Sam was just another successful businessman who enjoyed hanging around entertainers. The criminal side was completely hidden beneath this charming, sophisticated exterior. The initial friendship between Frank and Sam was built on genuine mutual admiration and shared interests. Frank appreciated Sam's power and protection, while Sam enjoyed access to Frank's celebrity world and the prestige that came with being close to America's most popular entertainer. Both men were at the peaks of their respective careers in 1960. Frank was riding high on a comeback that had re-established him as the world's biggest entertainment star, while Sam controlled the most powerful crime organization in America, with influence extending from Chicago politics to Las Vegas casinos to Hollywood labor unions. The friendship offered practical benefits for both men. Frank gained protection from the kind of mob harassment that plagued other entertainers, while Sam gained legitimacy and social access that helped him maintain his sophisticated public image. However, the relationship also created vulnerabilities that neither man initially recognized. Frank's association with Sam would eventually attract FBI attention that threatened his mainstream career, while Sam's friendship with Frank would create law enforcement opportunities that endangered his criminal organization. Most dangerously, both men underestimated how their friendship would be perceived by federal investigators, who were beginning to understand the connections between organized crime and legitimate entertainment businesses in Las Vegas and Hollywood. The Kennedy Campaign Connection, 1960. The complexity and danger of Frank Sinatra's relationship with Sam Giancana escalated dramatically during the 1960 presidential campaign, when Frank's support for John F. Kennedy created a triangle of relationships between Hollywood, organized crime, and American politics that would ultimately threaten all three men. Frank's enthusiasm for Kennedy's candidacy was genuine and personal. He admired JFK's charisma, sophistication, and generational change from older political establishments, while seeing opportunities to translate his entertainment industry influence into political power and access. However, Frank's campaign support for Kennedy coincided with his deepening friendship with Sam Giancana, creating connections between the Kennedy campaign and organized crime that federal investigators would later identify as evidence of election fraud and criminal conspiracy. Sam Giancana's interest in the Kennedy campaign was purely transactional. The Chicago outfit needed political protection from federal law enforcement crackdowns, and Sam believed that supporting Kennedy through Frank's connections could provide access to a new administration that might be more cooperative than Republican alternatives. Frank genuinely believed he could help Kennedy win the presidency while maintaining his friendship with Sam, observed FBI agent William Romer, who supervised surveillance of both men. What Frank didn't understand was that he was creating documented connections between a presidential candidate and organized crime that would eventually destroy all of his relationships. The 1960 campaign activities that connected Frank, Sam, and Kennedy included fundraising events where mob money was mixed with legitimate contributions, political rallies where known criminals provided security and logistical support, and private meetings where campaign strategy was discussed in the presence of people under federal investigation. Most significantly, Sam Giancana's Chicago organization provided crucial support for Kennedy's narrow victory in Illinois, where voter fraud and intimidation helped deliver the state's electoral votes that made Kennedy's national victory possible. Frank's role in facilitating these connections made him a witness to federal crimes that endangered everyone involved. Kennedy's narrow victory in the 1960 election created new dangers for everyone involved in the Frank-Sam friendship. Federal investigators began examining the role of organized crime in Kennedy's campaign, while the new administration faced pressure to distance itself from any connections to criminal organizations. Frank believed his campaign support had earned him permanent access to Kennedy and protection from federal investigation. Instead, he had created evidence of criminal conspiracy that would make him a target of the very administration he had helped elect. The FBI surveillance begins. 1961. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI began intensive surveillance of Frank Sinatra and Sam Giancana in early 1961, recognizing that their friendship represented a direct threat to American political and entertainment institutions through the combination of organized crime and celebrity influence. The federal investigation was motivated by growing evidence that organized crime had penetrated legitimate businesses in Las Vegas and Hollywood, while gaining dangerous influence over American political processes through entertainment industry connections like Frank's relationship with Sam. FBI surveillance methods were sophisticated and comprehensive, including wiretapped phone conversations, hidden recording devices in restaurants and hotels, photographic surveillance of meetings and social events, and financial investigations of business transactions that connected entertainment and criminal enterprises. The FBI surveillance of Frank and Sam was unlike anything we had ever attempted, recalled Agent William Romer. These were two of the most powerful men in America, operating at the highest levels of entertainment and crime. We needed evidence that would hold up in court against people with unlimited resources for legal defense. The wiretapped conversations between Frank and Sam revealed the depth and danger of their relationship, while providing federal investigators with evidence of criminal activities that ranged from tax evasion to political corruption to interstate transportation of stolen goods. More damaging to Frank was evidence that he had knowingly participated in activities that benefited organized crime, including money laundering through entertainment businesses, political influence operations, and interference with federal investigations through his political connections. The surveillance also revealed Sam's true attitude toward Frank, which was more manipulative and calculating than the warm friendship that Frank believed they shared. Sam viewed Frank primarily as a useful asset for gaining legitimacy and political access, rather than as a genuine friend deserving protection or loyalty. FBI recordings captured conversations where Sam discussed using Frank's political connections to interfere with federal investigations, while other conversations revealed Sam's willingness to sacrifice Frank's career and safety to protect the Chicago outfit's criminal operations. Frank's gradual awareness that he was under federal surveillance created paranoia and stress that affected his personal relationships, professional performance, and decision-making abilities. The man who had always controlled his public image found himself constantly worried about being watched and recorded. The investigation also created pressure within Sam's criminal organization, where other mob leaders began questioning whether Sam's friendship with Frank had created unnecessary law enforcement attention that endangered their collective criminal enterprises. The Kennedy betrayal, 1962. The relationship between Frank Sinatra and President John F. Kennedy collapsed dramatically in early 1962, when Attorney General Robert Kennedy forced the president to end all contact with Frank due to his documented connections with organized crime figures like Sam Giancana. Frank had expected his campaign support and personal friendship with JFK to provide permanent access to the White House and protection from federal investigation. Instead, he discovered that political relationships were transactional and that his mob connections made him a liability that the Kennedy administration could not afford to maintain. The betrayal was particularly painful because it was delivered through Frank's brother-in-law, Peter Lawford, who was forced to inform Frank that he was no longer welcome at Kennedy family events or White House functions. The message was clear. Frank's friendship with Sam had made him too dangerous for the president to acknowledge publicly. Frank was devastated by Kennedy's rejection, recalled actress Shirley MacLaine. He had genuinely believed that his political support had created a permanent friendship with the most powerful man in the world. Learning that he was being discarded for political convenience broke something inside Frank that never fully healed. Robert Kennedy's decision to cut ties with Frank was based on FBI reports that documented Frank's criminal associations and activities. The Attorney General understood that any continued relationship with Frank would create political vulnerabilities that could destroy the Kennedy administration's credibility and effectiveness. Frank's response to Kennedy's betrayal was anger, humiliation, and a determination to prove that he was more loyal to his friends than the politicians who had used and discarded him. This response would ultimately make his relationship with Sam even more dangerous. Sam Giancana's reaction to Frank's political exile was complex. While he had lost a valuable political connection, he also gained leverage over Frank, who now depended entirely on mob protection and support for his Las Vegas career and personal safety. The Kennedy betrayal marked the point where Frank's options began narrowing dangerously. Cut off from legitimate political protection, he became more dependent on criminal associates who viewed him as an asset rather than a friend, while remaining under federal surveillance that threatened anyone who continued associating with him. The Cal-Neva Lodge Scandal, 1963. Frank Sinatra's ownership interest in the Cal-Neva Lodge at Lake Tahoe became the focal point of federal investigation when evidence emerged that the resort was being used for money laundering, illegal gambling, and meetings between organized crime figures from multiple criminal organizations. The Cal-Neva Lodge was Frank's attempt to create an entertainment venue that he could control completely, away from the complex mob relationships that characterized Las Vegas casinos. Instead, the resort became a magnet for criminal activity that provided federal investigators with evidence needed to destroy Frank's casino career permanently. Sam Giancana's frequent presence at Cal-Neva created federal violations of gaming regulations that prohibited known criminals from casino premises. Frank's failure to prevent these violations provided Nevada gaming authorities with justification to revoke his casino license and end his Las Vegas career. The Cal-Neva situation was a disaster for Frank on every level, observed gaming attorney Oscar Goodman. He thought he could control the criminal activity at his resort, but he was way out of his league. Sam and his people used Cal-Neva for activities that Frank didn't understand and couldn't stop, and he ended up taking responsibility for crimes he didn't even know were happening. FBI surveillance at Cal-Neva documented meetings between crime bosses from Chicago, New York, and Las Vegas, along with financial transactions that clearly indicated money laundering through the resort's entertainment and gaming operations. Frank's involvement in these activities made him a target of federal prosecution for racketeering and tax evasion. The scandal escalated in July 1963 when Sam Giancana was physically present at Cal-Neva during a weekend when gaming regulators had specifically prohibited his presence at Nevada casinos. Frank's failure to remove Sam from the property provided immediate grounds for license revocation. Nevada Gaming Control Board hearings revealed that Frank had repeatedly lied about his knowledge of criminal activity at Cal-Neva, while failing to implement basic security measures that could have prevented violations of gaming regulations. His testimony was contradicted by FBI surveillance evidence that proved his direct involvement in questionable activities. Frank's attempts to fight the license revocation through political connections failed completely when former allies refused to support someone whose criminal associations had become public knowledge. The man who had once commanded political influence found himself abandoned by everyone who had previously sought his favor. The loss of his Nevada gaming license was financially devastating, costing Frank millions in current income and future earning potential, while effectively ending his ability to perform regularly in Las Vegas, the center of his entertainment career. The death threats begin. Late 1963. Frank Sinatra's position became truly dangerous in late 1963 when both federal investigators and organized crime figures began viewing him as a threat who knew too much about criminal activities to be allowed to remain free and uncontrolled. FBI agents made it clear to Frank that his cooperation with federal investigations could provide protection from prosecution, but would also make him a target of organized crime retaliation that the government might not be able to prevent. The choice was cooperation and witness protection, or prosecution and prison. Simultaneously, Sam Giancana and other mob leaders began questioning Frank's loyalty and reliability as federal pressure increased on their criminal organizations. Frank's celebrity status and political connections, which had once made him valuable, now made him a liability who could expose criminal activities to save his own career. By late 1963, Frank was in an impossible situation, recalled FBI agent William Romer. We needed his cooperation to prosecute major organized crime figures, but his cooperation would probably get him killed. Meanwhile, the mob needed Frank's silence about their activities, but they couldn't trust someone who was under federal investigation and might cut a deal to save himself. The death threats were subtle but clear. Frank received warnings from mob associates that his continued cooperation with federal investigators could result in accidents similar to those that had befallen other people who had betrayed organized crime trust and confidentiality. Federal investigators offered witness protection and relocation, but Frank understood that accepting government protection would end his entertainment career while providing no guarantee of long-term safety from criminal retaliation. Frank's celebrity status provided some protection from direct violence, but also created vulnerabilities through his predictable public appearances and known associates. Both sides could reach him whenever they decided the risks of eliminating him were outweighed by the benefits. The stress of constant threat from multiple directions affected Frank's health, relationships, and professional performance. Friends and colleagues noticed increasing paranoia, erratic behavior, and social isolation as Frank struggled to maintain his public image while managing private fears about his safety. Most devastatingly, Frank realized that his friendship with Sam had been manipulated from the beginning. The mob boss had cultivated their relationship specifically to gain access to Frank's political connections and entertainment industry influence. With no regard for the personal and professional destruction this would cause Frank when federal investigation made their association public knowledge. The Desperate Escape, 1964. Frank Sinatra's escape from the deadly triangle of federal investigation, mob pressure, and career destruction required careful maneuvering that satisfied government demands without completely alienating criminal associates who could still threaten his life and safety. The strategy Frank developed was partial cooperation with federal investigators that provided useful information without directly implicating him in serious crimes, while maintaining enough distance from organized crime figures to satisfy gaming regulators and entertainment industry executives. However, this middle course pleased no one completely and left Frank vulnerable to retaliation from multiple directions if any party decided his cooperation or resistance was insufficient for their purposes. Frank's testimony to federal investigators was carefully crafted to acknowledge his relationship with Sam Giancana while minimizing his knowledge of specific criminal activities. This approach protected him from perjury charges while limiting his value as a witness in organized crime prosecutions. The end of Frank's friendship with Sam was gradual rather than dramatic, achieved through reduced contact and carefully worded statements that indicated Frank's cooperation with legitimate authorities without explicitly declaring his break with criminal associates. Frank's rehabilitation required rebuilding his reputation and career around legitimate entertainment activities, while demonstrating that his criminal associations were historical rather than continuing relationships. This process took years and cost him millions in lost opportunities. The psychological toll of the dangerous friendship was permanent. Frank never again developed close relationships with people whose backgrounds he hadn't thoroughly investigated, and he remained paranoid about surveillance and threats throughout his later career. Modern recognition and warning. Frank Sinatra's deadly friendship with Sam Giancana represents one of entertainment history's most dangerous examples of how celebrity status cannot protect against the consequences of criminal associations and the forces those relationships can unleash. From a historical perspective, the Frank-Sam relationship illuminated the connections between organized crime and legitimate entertainment businesses that federal investigators used to dismantle criminal organizations and clean up Las Vegas gaming operations. The cultural impact extended beyond entertainment to influence public understanding of how criminal organizations penetrate legitimate society through celebrity relationships and the corruption of entertainment and political institutions. Frank's experience serves as a cautionary tale about the seductive appeal of dangerous friendships and the impossibility of maintaining relationships with criminal organizations without becoming complicit in their activities. Contemporary celebrity culture still references Frank's mob connections as an example of how association with criminal figures can destroy careers and reputations while creating personal dangers that fame and wealth cannot overcome. The story demonstrates that even the most powerful entertainers are vulnerable to criminal manipulation and federal investigation when they allow personal relationships to compromise their professional judgment and legal obligations. From a law enforcement perspective, the Frank-Sam investigation provided blueprints for future operations targeting organized crime infiltration of legitimate businesses and political corruption through celebrity influence. The story reminds us that friendship choices have consequences that can exceed our ability to control or escape them, and that the glamour of dangerous associations often conceals threats that become apparent only when it's too late to retreat safely. If this story of deadly friendship and narrow escape moved you, subscribe to the Sinatra Lost Vault and hit that notification bell. We're revealing the hidden dangers that celebrity status cannot overcome when friendship becomes a threat to survival itself. What other dangerous celebrity friendships would you want us to investigate? Let us know in the comments below.